Well, we're picking up the Golden Spike story at the Golden Spike.
The actual place.
We're coming out here to Promontory Summit, not Promontory, but Promontory Summit, where the Golden Spike was actually driven on the exact location, exactly 150 years to the minute later. They will be redriving the Golden Spike, so check this out. Well, we're getting back to the reenactment of the driving of the Golden Spike. If you remember, we had the show Chasing the Big Boy because the Big Boy was coming to town in anticipation of the event. So when May 10th, 2019 finally rolled around, we headed up to the Golden Spike site to watch them drive the Golden Spike at the exact same instant it was driven 150 years before.
I really love the looks of these beautiful engines.
There was a plan to build them for the 100th anniversary 50 years ago, but well, they finally got around to it a few years after that, but they've been up here now for almost 50 years.
The crowds were just amazing.
They said there were 30,000 people.
I could believe that.
Normally they can't deal with crowds like that, but boy, the Parks Department really pulled this off. They built new roads in there and new parking lots. They really geared up to handle these huge crowds. The events ran all day long, but they wanted to do the reenactment at the exact moment that the original Spike was driven, which occurs kind of in the middle of the afternoon. Surprisingly, more than half the people left.
Serious?
Well, they got through the governor's speech and all the different speechifying and testifying and celebrating, and a lot of people just, okay, we've seen enough, and they left.
Well, we got to see the better parts then.
So we kind of, I can't say we had the place to ourselves, but about 2/3 of the crowd was gone by the time they got around to actually driving the Golden Spike. In fairness, they did have a reenactment earlier in the day, and a lot of people, saw that one and didn't want to stay around for the reenactment in the afternoon, but they wanted to do the whole reenactment, everything scheduled to be happening exactly 150 years later on the exact spot that it happened originally. We did a show a while back about Chad O'Connor's rebuilding these engines. Boy, did he do a grand job. The mural work and scroll work and everything was all handled by the Disney studios.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Chad O'Connor, who was a big deal at Disney, he wasn't part of Disney, but he worked with Disney, built these two locomotives. Disney, of course, was quite the steam fanatic, and a lot of the guys at the studio were big steam fanatics, so, well, go figure.
Exactly.
They're not actually Disney engines, but you could make that argument. The shops are never open to the public, but if you get out there really, really early in the day before they bring the engines out, well, I've never heard of them throwing somebody out if you just stand outside the door, and then you can watch them bring the engines out for the day. O'Connor put a tremendous amount of work into researching the engines, trying to get them as accurate as possible. Oddly, the one thing that they could never quite figure out was the exact color of the engines. So these are best guess at that, but it's a pretty good guess. Ford Kimball painted Jim Bridger on the side of the dome here.
I love it.
No, but nobody knew.
Oh.
So he just said, well, I'm going to put Jim Bridger on there because that was one of the things that they could never figure out, what was painted on that side of the dome. The other side was a portrait of Johnny Appleseed.
Oh.
So he figured Jim Bridger should be on the other side.
Right.
There was the tiniest amount of controversy over figuring out exactly where the spike was driven. Some people said it was right here. Other people said, no, it was somewhere else. Now they figured that out quite simply. Right there where that kid's holding the spike is exactly this spot right here. This is where the golden spike was driven. And it's where it will be driven again here in just a few minutes. As soon as they get everybody in place, they'll slide a new tie into that space right there and then use the track maul here to drive in a spike.
Oh, it's too heavy, huh? Too heavy.
Actually, of course, the golden spike will just be dropped into a hole, which is exactly what happened 150 years ago. The final spike was actually an iron spike, just a regular old spike, and it was driven in with a plain old iron track maul. A lot of people don't know that. Well, the time has come, and the locomotives are being rolled into position. Again, everything is being synchronized to the exact time schedule from 150 years ago. They know that schedule very well because the whole incident here was broadcast via telegraph to the entire country. And so everyone knew exactly when everything was happening. And all of the speeches are therefore recorded word for word, and again, exactly when they were spoken was part of that record as well.
I'm glad the telegrapher didn't mess up.
Can you? It had never lived it down.
No.
Probably lost his job and everything.
Oh, yes.
So what do you think of the guy playing the telegrapher?
Oh, my.
I love the hair. I don't know if the original guy looked like that, but that's great.
We're assembled here to link the ends of the earth, to join the raw riches of the American West with the finished products of the industrial East. And Governor Stanford will then place these spikes into holes that have already been drilled in the laurelwood tie. These are not ordinary spikes. Ladies and gentlemen, these are golden spikes made from pure California gold.
Now, the spikes that they're using at the reenactment are not the original spikes. They're recreations. But they did bring the original spikes in just for the event. And for security reasons, they were on display in the state capitol building just outside the governor's office.
What an honor to see those.
Isn't that great?
Let hers be the last tie and the last spike.
Did you know they actually do this reenactment every single day all summer long from Memorial Day to Labor Day?
I did not know that.
It's a bunch of local people here. They have their own costumes and they volunteer and they come up here every single day. They've relayed a little bit of the track up here. Doesn't that look all right?
That looks really neat.
But you can also explore a lot of the old grade up here. There's miles and miles of old original grade that you can explore. Now, while all of that was going on at Promontory, a parallel event was going on in Ogden using the Big Boy and the 844 locomotive. We were able to attend both. We did not clone ourselves. It's just that they did both reenactments for 3 days.
Yes.
So we did this event on the 9th, and we did the Promontory event on the 10th, so we would be there for the actual moment of the driving of the Golden Spike.
4014, take them ahead. Over. Understood. Here we come. Region Pacific, coming ahead. Here we come, sir.
So just as the Union Pacific Vice President told Ed to bring the big boy up for the reenactment, they were photobombed
Oh my.
by the front runner train. Oops.
Oops.
Okay, take two. Everybody back to your first positions. And here comes Ed with the big boy finally. Yay!
Okay, one last thing. We're going to close this event today the same way we closed that epic day 150 years ago tomorrow. Then, they used a state-of-the-art communication technique in the telegraph as they telegraphed to the country the completion. At 2:27 p.m. that day, a telegraph from Promontory. Almost ready. Hats off. Prayer is being offered. Chicago replies, we understand. All is ready in the east. At 2:47, the telegraph from Promontory was the simple word done. So please join me in using today's modern, state-of-the-art communication and share your location that you're here today by using whatever social media channel you use and tagging this moment #done.
I wonder if Lincoln uses Facebook or Twitter. Oh, well, at least he got his message out there. Done! And if you guys want to put done in the comment section, then we will know that you were paying attention as well.
Don't forget the hashtag.
Hashtag done. And while all of this grand event was going on inside the Union Depot, they had a small train show going on, which is always fun. We love the Ogden train show. This was kind of a scaled down version of that. But that was just really neat to see some model railroads and some things being sold here in the Union Depot. Little impromptu train show going on. Speaking of train shows, we're so late getting the 150th reenactment up that next week is the Evanston train show already.
Oh, well, the summer went by just about that fast.
Yeah, well, we get out of sync with ourselves quite often. Anyway, so tune in next Sunday, because next Sunday we're going to take you guys to the Evanston train show in the old Evanston Roundhouse. And that's definitely worth seeing.
You are absolutely precious. Right on that train.
And Ogden is also the home to the Utah State Railroad Museum here at the Union Depot. And they have a bunch of just really great equipment on display here.
For 3 days, they had a big boy as part of the collection, too.
Yes, and 2 Northerns.
No kidding.
Because they already have one here, and now they have 844 temporarily here as well. This bad boy, number 26, the Turbine Locomotive, is the pride and joy of the collection here. It's one of the 8,500 horsepower turbines that the Union Pacific used in the 1960s. And, well, it's one of 2 that survive, and we've seen them both.
Right.
Because we saw the other one in Illinois. The Illinois Railway Museum has the other one. They did some last-minute repainting of this to get it ready for the show, and boy, doesn't it look sharp.
It looks nice.
Ooh, here we have the big exhaust port.
That's scary.
It's just kind of scary. It's like a 7-foot diameter, 6-foot diameter exhaust pipe for the turbine. And when this was first firing up, I do mean fire. That was fire coming out right there. I feel really fortunate that I was able to actually see these when they were running in the 1960s. They were something to see.
Speaking of something to see, they have the entire heritage fleet here.
It is something, isn't it?
Whoa.
They got it all cleaned up and did even some repainting to get it ready for the 150th. And they brought along the museum car. And the line was about an hour long to get in to see that. But people waited in line because, good grief, talk about something. They were actually selling rides on this up to Evanston behind the big boy $1,500.
Oh, wow.
So we passed on that.
Yes,
but,
passed out.
oh. And the depot is right at the end of Ogden's 25th Street, better known as 2-Bit Street.
2-Bit Street.
It's infamous. It was always an infamous location of bars and pawn shops and illegal gambling halls, you name it. It went on 2-Bit Street. And now, of course, it's the cool, hip place to hang out in Ogden. And they had the train show sort of cascading out into the street. Well, let's do some shopping.
Oh, check this out.
What a great pawn shop. They have a little bit of everything in here.
Well, if they don't have it, you don't need it.
Well, we don't need much of anything, but we buy it anyway.
That's right.
I loved their lanterns. You know, lantern collecting is so cool. And they had some really unusual ones. I was really coveting this bad boy here.
The infamous jackalope.
Yes, yes. Don't run over one of these.
No, they're hard on your tires.
Well, this was really a fun event going on here, but they had a parallel event going on up in Evanston, Wyoming, at the top of the hill.
They did.
Yes, so we, of course, drove up the hill to check that out as well. Well, after all, the big boy came up here, and we had to chase the big boy, so it just became necessary to come up to Evanston.
They have a really great depot here.
Well, and they've restored this whole area. They call it Depot Square. That's really neat.
I like it.
It's actually been done to sort of a forced perspective. All these windows are really small to make the depot look big.
Exactly.
That's a fun idea. I think somebody should model that.
I think so.
They were serving hot dogs in here, so of course we stopped for a couple of hot dogs.
That's right.
But that gave us a chance to check out the inside of the depot. You don't often get a chance to come in here quite often. It's just locked up. So this was really fun to be able to see the inside of the depot.
Then we had to check out the museum.
It's a good museum. They've got a lot of really fun things going on inside here. Got an entire general store sort of recreated. I like the pickle barrel.
Yes, pickles.
Yes, and the Josh House.
Yes.
They've recreated the Josh House. That's really cool. And just this whole part of Evanston is really being rejuvenated and brought back to life. And that's not all.
They are restoring the entire roundhouse.
Yes, and we've been following along with that, and they're getting really close to having it done.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's turning out great. And as we mentioned, next week we're covering the Evanston Train Show, and over the few months of summer, they've gotten a lot more of this done, so check that out. We'll have an update on Sunday. And of course, we're going to be saying goodbye to the big boy here for just a little while.
Yes, just a little while.
It's off to the Midwest, but it's coming back in the fall, and we will be there.
Exactly.
Every time we come to the reenactment, I'm blown, but this time attending it with 30,000 other people.
Wow.
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Like, how many people can they fit on a piece of land?
But I am so absolutely impressed at the Parks Department preparing for this event.
Oh, no kidding.
I wondered how they were going to handle 30,000 people when the typical attendance at the reenactment is around a couple hundred.
Yes.
But they built that whole new parking lot, built a new road to the parking lot.
Right.
They did a great job of managing who's going to get to park in the parking lot. And just stellar in style.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, do pop on over to the channel. And if you're not a subscriber, do subscribe, because it's an enormous amount of fun, and you want to be a subscriber because A, you're cool, and B, you get to brag to your friends.
That's right.
And the easy way to become cool and get to brag to your friends is to click on the blue button. Are we ready for that?
Yes.
Zoink! Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Tuesday with some screwing around in the attic. See you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.